Hello, everyone, and welcome, welcome. Welcome to our Black History Month edition of using Advocacy and Champions programs to support diversity all year. So what we're going to focus on today is we're going to talk a little bit about different types of advocacy programs. We're going to talk a little bit about what Champions programs are. We're going to talk a little bit about different communities that you can deliver advocacy through, including open source and inner source. And we're going to talk about how all of these things work together in practice. And then we're going to have a conversation at the end, or I would say for the rest of the time, where we're going to talk about what this possibly can look like in practice. We'll be speaking from our own experience and some of the experimentation that we've done over the last couple of years at IBM. We have one of our very own IBM Federated advocates with us here today, and you'll learn what that means in just a few minutes. But I want to thank you all so much for coming, and we will go ahead and get started. So a few pieces of housekeeping. I will share all of the links in the chat at the end of our session as well. All of the slides will be available to you. We're going to use the same deck today that we're going to use tomorrow for our developer happy hour. So you'll only need one URL for both of those. So you'll be able to access everything we're going to cover today at ibm.biz/BHM22-slides. And as always, if you have any suggestions or have any questions, you can always add those to our crowdcast in the chat or in the questions section. You can also always add comments to the slides. So if there's something not clear or something you would like to see or add so that we can make updates and run a V2 of this session, please feel free. We're always open to feedback. Yes, this session is being recorded. So even if you're joining from one of our IBM Developer social channels, you can access the recording, the live stream recording at our IBM Developer Crowdcast. So the URL for this session, it will be found at crowdcast.io/e/BHM22/1. And we'll be using this more for tomorrow. But if you're interested in signing up for an IBM Cloud account, so you can get started in playing around with our new IBM Developer Sandbox, trying out some cool applications, some deployments, a little bit of AI and machine learning, you can do that at ibm.biz/BHM22-DEI. So if you haven't already, please feel free to share in the chat. Here's just some suggestions. We'll be introducing ourselves as well. So please feel free, if you're comfortable, to share your name and pronouns, your title, company, or program you're studying with, where you're joining from, or where you're from, and something you love, or something that's important to you. And then we always like to end with a quirk, something that's uniquely weird or different about you. So I will start. My name is Jenna. My pronouns are she, her. I am a cloud developer advocate at IBM. A few things about me. So I'm originally from Detroit. I'm currently joining you from Austin, Texas. Nice escape from this cold and snow for a little bit. My team is based here. Let's see, something I love. So you may have heard in a previous workshop, I have 3 Yorkies. I love them very much. They have probably 100 toys, and every time I try to throw one out, one of them picks it up and acts like it's their favorite toy. So we have way too many toys at our house that we're always tripping over. And a quirk, so something that's uniquely different about me is I have an obsession with tuna melts. So I always request, if you have any suggestions for the best tuna salad sandwich or the best tuna melt you've always had, feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm always open to trying out a new sandwich and probably eat more tuna than is recommended. So that's a little bit about me. You can find me on all social channels at jwritten on all social platforms. If you would like to connect with me, you can do that at my Linktree, which is just Linktree/jwritten. So I'm going to let our special guest, the other side to the coin, Evan, introduce himself, so you can all get to know about him a little bit more, and we're going to have a conversation with him in a little bit.
Hey, everyone. Sorry about that. Hope that wasn't crazy weird. Um, I'm Evan Blash, Blache, if you're from the bougie side of my family. I have been with IBM for a little bit over 10 years. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you all for joining again. A couple things about me. I'm in the cybersecurity space, and I really enjoy the things that we do around cybersecurity. A few quirks and a few things about me. I'm not a very big or athletic person, but I love to talk trash, whether that's on the basketball court. I think I'm moving fast. I'm really, really slow, but you probably wouldn't know it by the game that I have, or my talk trashing game, if you will. Anyway, I am also based in Austin and originally from the New Orleans area. So shout out to any folks from the boot. And that's all there is to know really about me. So back over to you, Jenna. And so sorry about that feedback.
Thank you so much, Evan. No worries. You know what it is. I will mute before I unmute you so we don't make anyone else's ears bleed. That was my mistake. Thank you so much, Evan. Evan is going to help us with our conversation once we get through a few things. So one of the things I want to start with and make sure that I share for all of you, if you look in the chat at the top, I can also add it again here for you. IBM has Be Equal resources. Let me just post this right here. So we have lots of resources, information about our what we call our Be Equal allyship. We have lots of resources for various communities. We have ways to get involved. So at the link that I just added in our IBM Be Equal site that we have, there's all kinds of information here. So if you're looking to support any underserved communities, get involved with diversity, equity, and inclusion, you're looking to be get more active, you can definitely do that here. Let me just see right here. So actually, what'll be good for context setting, let me just go up here. So what we're going to start out with is we're going to do some context setting for all of you before we get started. Sorry, let me just, interesting. I don't know how to go back. Just reshare real quick. Okay, thank you for your patience. So the first things we want to start with is I am not a fan of acronyms. They make things shorter and easier when we have conversations and documentation and things like that, but I always like to make sure we're all on the same page. So first of all, what I would like to start with is what is DEI? So when we talk about diversity, right? Sometimes we talk about diversity, sometimes you'll hear inclusion, sometimes you'll hear equity, right? So DEI is the acronym for diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know what? I have a really good infographic for this. I will add it to the slides later. So diversity to me is DEI as a cohesive piece. Diversity to me is acknowledging all of our differences, acknowledging all of the different communities, whether that be racial, ethnic communities, neuroatypical communities, different communities like LGBTQ plus, accessibility, communities of people who are have different obstacles to overcome when it comes to accessibility. These are kind of all of the things that we're talking about. We're talking about diversity, all of the different communities. And when we're talking about equity, we're talking about leveling the playing field. So and equity refers more closely to things when we talk about things like privilege, right? When we talk about things like underserved communities who have more or less access to resources like education and job opportunities, right? So equity is finding a balance in between where we're all starting at the same point. So think of it as a race, and we're all starting at the same starting point. And inclusion is bringing all of these pieces together, right? So if you're sitting in a conference room with your team and you look around, asking yourself, who's not at the table? Who's not in this conversation? Who are we not? Whose insight and feedback are we not able to elicit in this conversation? And how can we include them in the room? If we can't physically bring them in the room, how can we make sure that we are getting perspectives from any of our diverse communities that are not already don't already have access to the room? They're not already having a seat at the table. So inclusion is finding ways to do that, whether or not you can physically have them in the same space. How are you still able to give them the same type of access? And we'll talk about some ways in which we use advocacy to do that as well. So these are backwards. The next thing we're going to talk about are, so every company has their own acronyms and their own words of referring to employee groups. So you may have heard BRGs or ERGs. So BRGs is just an acronym for business resource groups. So at IBM, we have business resource groups. You may have heard ERGs, employee resource groups. Some companies refer to them as employee groups, but they're all referring to the same thing. They're referring to organizations within the company. So for instance, I'm a member of our IBM Women's Business Resource Group, where we focus on supporting women IBMers at the company and supporting initiatives for things like Women's History Month and International Women's Day, things like that. But more importantly, supporting the professional development of women throughout the year. And that's a lot to take on for one small group of employees out of an entire company. And Evan is a member of the IBM Austin Black BRG. So he does work with them all year round to support the Black IBMers that we have at the company, and helping with their professional development and sharing the work that they're doing and supporting each other throughout their careers. So what we're going to get started with first is I want to give you some background into different types of programs. Now, these are just a few. There are a lot more, but these are just a few of the programs that we have experimented with finding alignment between over the last few years at IBM through advocacy. So first of all, what is developer advocacy? And if you're at an earlier stage startup or at a smaller company, you might not necessarily have developer advocacy yet. It might be something that you're working to build out. And if you're a techie in the space, you may not have heard of developer advocacy. You may have heard of evangelism. Evangelism is usually the other very commonly used term. So developer advocacy, technical evangelism, they're all referring to advocacy for developers in the community. So what is a developer advocate and what do we do? So a developer advocate is a full-time employee, and typo, represents the company's values and mission, We teach the tech community technical topics, and that's the entire encompassing technical community. Whether you're a PM or in data or you're in tech sales, we're there to teach technical topics, create easy to understand technical content. So you can 1, 2, 3 follow and not just do the thing, but understand what you're doing and why. We enable the use of our company's products through documentation and other products as well. So maybe API integrations that we use and products of clients and partners that we build with as well. And we do that through documentation, tutorials, sample applications, tech talks, where we do things like talk about the technical topics behind the products we work with, workshops, hackathons. We also do that at speaking at conferences, panel discussion, things like that. Lots of different ways where we can get creative in different methods of delivering content. And the biggest takeaway here is a lot of times a developer advocate is the first point of contact with the tech community for your company. So most of the companies that I have personal and professional relationships with, I met through an advocate. I went to a conference and spoke with someone at a booth, and their developer advocate was there. Or I spoke with someone after a workshop that I went to, and they were a developer advocate running the workshop. It's really the first line of defense for your company, and that's where that first impression, that first impact, in showing not just the technology, but really showing your company's values and mission, the type of employees that are working at the company, what it's like to work there, the type of people you would be working with, getting a feel for the company culture. So the developer advocate role is really, really powerful if you use it in the right way, and can provide a lot of impact for the company as well as for the community. So one of the things I'm going to introduce you today, you may have heard me introduce Evan as our esteemed Federated advocate. Evan has been with the Federated Advocacy Program since we started the IBM Austin team, and started working together in person in Austin, and then we switched things virtually and expanded the program to North America. But what is a Federated Advocacy Program, and what does that mean? How is this different from developer advocacy? So the biggest difference here is a federated advocate, and that's the terminology that we use at IBM. A federated advocate is a company employee whose full-time role is not as a developer advocate. So that's all that means. They're an employee at your company. They're doing advocacy related work, but their full-time role is engineering or technical PM or data scientist or tech sales, or any other role really. We've done accessibility workshops and worked with designers. So it's someone whose full-time role is not dedicated to advocacy, but they're supporting advocacy's work for your company in a number of ways. So that could be they work on a product team in a technical role. So we've had developer advocates federated advocates who are software engineers on a product team, and they've built an API and SDK out for one of our security products. Since they're the subject matter expert on that product, since that's what they built themselves, right? That was their deliverable. Who's a better fit to run a workshop on how to use it and how to integrate it into an application? So it's utilizing people and meeting your employees where they're at and finding opportunities for them to showcase their skills, upskill, build their, what we like to refer to at IBM as their technical eminence, and find opportunities for them to grow in their career. This can also be someone that works at your company. Let me just make sure we just want to make sure I wasn't missing any questions. Feel free. I'm just going to pause for a second. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to add to the chat. We're going to incorporate all of your feedback into our discussion at the end. So anything you want us to touch on or talk about, please feel free to share. So a federated advocate can also be an employee that works at your company and wants to transition into a more hands-on technical role. Maybe they're in tech sales, maybe they're in QA or QE, and they want to get it into more of a dev or engineering role. Federated advocacy provides a space for them to learn new skills, update and up-level their technical hands-on skills, showcase those skills, and then be able to take that work and look for new positions in the area that they want, show and have experience to show. They support the work of developer advocates through events. So we have a lot of federated advocates who, when we first started doing in-person events, were helping with things that I mentioned are so important in developer advocacy. Greeting people when they come to our building, making sure everyone's taken care of and doesn't have any questions, setting the standard for how we communicate and interact with each other. So making sure that we're all wearing name tags with our name and pronouns on it so that other people feel comfortable sharing their name and pronouns if they choose to do so, right? It's supporting all of the work to create an inclusive space where everyone feels comfortable so that they're so much more receptive to whatever message it is that you're delivering through your events. Our federated advocates are able to run their own events, and they're supported by people like me. So that I can come to an event and Evan can showcase his new technical chops in Kubernetes, and I can be the host and DJ Jenna for the evening, right? And give my platform to others at our company so that they can boost their career in the areas that they're looking to grow. And the part we're going to focus on tonight is supporting and running diversity, equity, and inclusion events alongside with developer advocates. That's something that we've been doing for the past, I guess this will be our third Black History Month that we've been doing Black History Month events, Women's Month events. We do Pride events, accessibility, Hacktoberfest, right? And we work together to do those events so that we're sharing the load that we have to work with. We're able to make the event that much better with everyone's insight and work together and do something fun for all of you in our community. So this is just an example of what are different forms of advocacy. So some of the things we talked about, creating blog posts and articles. And this is an example from actually our IBM Z advocacy federated program. Hosting and facilitating events, contributing to code, teaching courses, speaking at conferences, mentoring. This is something that we're going to start doing more of this year with what we're going to talk about next, our champions programs. So one of the things that I'm working on building this year is more of a closer alignment between our federated advocates and our champions, and providing some much needed mentorship for young developers that are looking to get into the tech space. Maybe they haven't had their first job yet, or maybe they're, as I mentioned before, maybe they're in a QA/QE role and we're trying to get into a dev role. How we can support them in that work and learn together. So what is a champion? You may have heard of different companies have champions programs. So I was a Twilio champion before I joined IBM. That was one of the first connections and interactions that I had with Twilio. And I started doing champion work with them outside of my full-time job, just through the relationships that I built with them, and our alignment on mission and supporting communities, underserved communities, like my community back home in Detroit. Um, Actually, the first tech event that I went to in Detroit, I had to pay to go to, and it was a Salesforce event. And I felt that it just went against everything I believed in and everything that I had learned to be the best parts of the tech community from when I was living in the Bay Area. So I actually started working with Twilio as a champion, to bring all of the good parts of that: workshops, accessibility, bringing swag, paying for food, giving someone a meal who's in a boot camp, who, is struggling to get by just like I did, trying to get through and get a job as quick as possible. So we have an IBM Champions program as well. So what a champion is, it's a non-employee. It's someone that doesn't work at your company, but that's interested in your company's mission, products, whatever it may be. They have interest in your company. And they're able to do the same type of work as a federated advocate outside the company, as federated advocates do inside the company, and developer advocates. So they're able to support product teams through different acts of advocacy, like we just talked about. They're able to support developer advocates with their own acts of advocacy. They're able to spread the company's values and mission through their own work in the tech space. So champions go out and speak at conferences and workshops and run DEI events and build their own technical eminence and their own brand as a techie in the tech space. And they're able to do that by evangelizing your company's products. So maybe they're doing a IBM workshop with the Twilio integration, and that's something that they're doing, that they're speaking at on their own, as an employee of another company, and they're doing that on their own. But it's helping drive your company's products and mission through the work that they're doing. They run their own events. So they speak at other meetups outside of just your company's meetup groups. They speak at other meetup groups and showcase applications and products and, chat bots and fun things that they've built at other meetup groups to help build their public speaking skills. And then support and run their own diversity, equity, and inclusion events alongside developer advocates. And this is something that I'm really working on growing this year. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the IBM Champions program so you can get an idea of what that looks like. So IBM Champions provide content, leadership, and advocacy across tech communities and solutions. They influence and mentor to help others make the most of investments in IBM software solutions and services. So there's an annual selection process. They work more closely with some of the product teams in terms of giving them opportunities of things to work on, if they don't already have an idea for something they want to work on. And there's an annual process for selection, and it's based on, contributions you've made through the previous year. So the main goal is knowledge sharing, growing the community, evangelizing and advocating for your company, giving feedback on your offerings and suggestions for direction. This is really powerful as a company, because you're able to have non-biased feedback of someone using your product and what they would like to see as someone who's outside of your company trying to use your products. And then sharing open source and technical contributions as well. So before we hop ahead, I want to see if there's any questions or comments. If you have anything, feel free to post in the chat. So what we're going to look at next is, you're probably all familiar with open source. Yes, that's a pretty common thing, right? Open source community. Hacktoberfest is supporting open source, and DigitalOcean's, Hacktoberfest events where, you contribute to a couple of projects and win your sweet Hacktoberfest swag. Limited edition, get your commits in before the end of the month, right? We're all familiar with open source. We see open source products at conferences we go to, right? If you go to GitHub Universe or any developer conference, you'll see all kinds of booths that are promoting open source technologies. So they want your company to consume their products and build with it. That's open source. They're sharing their API integrations, they're sharing their SDKs, they're sharing their source code with you to an extent to integrate it into your product, contribute to it, make it better, add code to add features or things you'd like to see. So if that's outer source, then what's inner source, right? So inner source is relatively new to me. I actually am just starting to work in the inner source space within our company. So what inner source is, it's a program for open source type collaboration that's internal to your company. So think about a company as large as IBM. We have open source products for our partners and clients and the developer open source community to consume and build whatever you want. And then we have all kinds of products. Like, think about all of the things that come out of IBM research, like Project Debater, and a lot of the data and AI, machine learning, and quantum. And there's a lot of things that we do, security products. There's a lot of things that we do and that we build internal to our company that aren't all necessarily open source products. So they might be products that other companies use, but they're not open source technologies where we're sharing our code, and you're able to just make a contribution to a repo if you're outside the company. And these projects are still extremely valuable, especially in the work we do with our partners and clients. However, it can be difficult to have transparency across the company with them not being open source in a sense. So what inner source is inner source is the space for that. So inner source is a program where, for instance, what we're doing is building a platform where project teams across our company can have transparency into what other teams in the company are doing. So for instance, one of the biggest pluses for this is reducing duplicate work across departments, across different areas of technology. At a company as large as enterprise companies are, you can have 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that are working on very similar projects. And I think we all can agree that we can always use more resources, right? But there's not always budget for it. So with a program like Inner Source and having a space that supports inner source collaboration, those teams can be have transparency into the projects that they're working on and collaborate collectively. So instead of having five projects that are going on that need more support and more resources, they can decrease that down to 1 or 2. And all work on contributing to one better quality, better supported, more featured, and more richly built out product. it also enables employees to be able to contribute to each other's team's repos and maintain those repos. So again, supporting product teams. A lot of times there's shuffles happen within companies, and there isn't always someone available to continue to support those products. But having it open internally company wide allows that people that are interested in that product and interested in that technology to continue to maintain those projects, continue to maintain those repos, and allow other people to, like I mentioned, contribute. Maybe there's a feature ad that a team really needs. So the big piece here is maybe there's a team in research that would benefit from the consumption of a product that a team over in systems built, right? So they're able to use and consume that product that the other team built. And maybe there's a feature ask that I'm sure we all create issues in each other's repos of, hey, there's a bug here, or there's a fix here, or this isn't working. Well, instead of opening issues, what we're able to do is say, hey, you know what? I know a feature that my team would use immediately tomorrow if it were added to your product. And our team is able to, or I'm able to, just add the source code required for that feature and then submit a pull request to the team, right? So I'm not waiting on another team to be able to implement or adding technical debt to their product. I'm able to actually contribute code to the project that's going to end up helping my team function better and use their product better. It also allows for, just like with our other advocacy programs, inner source programs also allow for opportunities for employees to upskill in new areas. So, for instance, I mentioned I am now an inner source developer advocate. So I'll be doing the same type of developer advocacy work I did for our open source products externally to the company. I'll be doing the same type of work for our inner source projects that are internal to the company, and doing the same type of thing. So I'll be able to run workshops and do tech talks and enable teams to consume each other's products, build integrations so that they can use each other's projects and products. And just like with all types of advocacy, it'll allow for upskilling in new areas and career growth opportunities. And most importantly, support the company's code quality and produce better products. So this is a resource on adopting inner source. I also have some resources on what inner source is. So there is an inner source community that is as a whole. So for instance, if you went to DigitalOcean to learn about open source, there is an inner source commons space where you can learn about inner source, the underlying foundations and infrastructure and the mission and the best practices for inner source. Those are all resources that are in the slides and that I'll also share with you at the end as well. So if you'd like to learn more, you can do that at Adopting Inner Source, Principles and Case Studies, resource by O'Reilly. So now we're going to get to our seeing it in action. So how do all of these things connect? So one of the things that we're experimenting this year is, instead of running federated workshops where we run a workshop. So for instance, Evan was really interested in Kubernetes. So we worked together. He put together a great workshop, ran a Kubernetes workshop on all the things he learned about Kubernetes, and then did a more advanced technical workshop on Kubernetes as well. And then the Champions program, they find opportunities for their champions to do advocacy type work as well. So instead of having these two things separate, we're starting tomorrow to do developer hacky hours, where we can create a space for federated advocates and champions to come together, increase the community as a whole, provide opportunities for mentorship, and most importantly, have a space where they can both showcase the work that they've done, the things that they're building, interact with the community, and take questions from anyone that's interested, and provide more opportunities for collaboration, in building new projects and experimenting and trying new things. So one of the things that we've done, for the past few years is we have used the Federated Advocacy Program to support diversity, equity, and inclusion events, throughout the year. So for instance, in February, instead of having a data and AI workshop or a cloud native workshop or any other technology security, in February, what we do is we say, how can we take the technologies we're working on and focus them in a way around the social issues that technology impacts? How can we support underserved communities through technology, and how can we use that as the base of any of the work that we do? So instead of doing a panel discussion on data and AI, we've done a panel discussion every year around racial bias in voice and recognition software. Voice and visual recognition software, and why those are problems, and how, more importantly, how those programs happen. Everything from what's wrong and missing from the data to what legislation is being put in place to fix it, and having experts not just at IBM but experts in the field across the tech space that are working on these technologies at other companies, and having a dialogue and facilitating a dialogue about where can we make changes, where are the gaps, where are we missing opportunities to correct these things before they happen, who is not seated at the table in these conversations. And then, as I mentioned, instead of writing a data and AI workshop, what I would do is run a data and AI workshop where we're focused on the development life cycle and the different areas along the path of building something end to end, and where are the areas where we need to stop and ask ourselves questions, whether it's how inclusive is this data? Is there representation for women? Is there representation for women of color? Is there representation for different orientations, right? The data is just as important as who are we designing this for, right? If you're designing a soap dispenser and you're developing it, using data, building it out, testing it also, and then rolling it out to production, but your automated soap dispenser only works for one or a very limited a very limited group of skin tones, then you really missed the boat. And you didn't miss it in testing, you didn't miss it in development, you didn't miss it in data, you didn't miss it in design, you missed it in every single one of those processes. You missed it in every single stage along the way. So we really break down and have those conversations and look at where are all the places where we can stop and ask, wait, are we considering this user? Are we considering this type of user at every stage in the game? And so when I run a workshop, we are talking about that, and that's the core of what we're doing and the core of what's important. But the result is we're also building an application. We're also building a data and AI model. We're also testing it with data. We're also doing something technical, but we're focusing on the piece that matters most, and it's the person that's going to use whatever product it is that we build. If we don't have users of our products, then we don't have a product. So focusing on the pieces that matter the most, and the result, rather than the focus, the result is we built something technical. We know how to do these technical things, but we're thinking about the process. We're thinking about all of the pieces in the process while we're doing them in a different way. And that's where we can really, really provide impact. And things like mitigating bias, right? How to use these tools, what's available. So this is kind of the method at which we've been approaching things. So instead of in March, again, just running a panel discussion or running a technical workshop, I've run panel discussions where we find really women in tech with really amazing, impactful stories, right? Of different backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, different economic backgrounds, different geographic backgrounds, and hear what people's stories are, right? Representation matters. So I've been working very closely with our Federated program and looking forward to working more closely with our Champions program to have those types of events, because in my opinion, those events are just as important, if not more, than the technical pieces. Because if you find a space and you find a company and you find a company culture and a community where you see yourself and you feel that you belong, then you're automatically going to be interested in all of the technical things that are going to come to follow, right? It's breaking down that first barrier to entry. So as I mentioned, we do events for Black History Month, Women's Month, Pride Month, International Women's Day, Trans Day of Visibility, which is this month. Make sure to watch out and find ways that you can contribute or support communities at the end of this month. Accessibility, Hispanic Heritage Month. There's I'm sure that there's lots more that I'm not mentioning. It's not a non-exhaustive list, but those are the pieces that really matter. And it doesn't take a whole lot of work to do the same type of work, deliver the same results from a technical perspective. But instead of making the technical outcome, which is we have a data model, we have an application at the end of this, instead of making that the core and the foundation of what you're doing, that's the automatic byproduct. The core of what you should doing is, where's the impact, right? Even with companies, they say if you really want to grow and scale a company and be very successful, you shouldn't be focused on the dollars at the end of your sheet. You should be focused on providing impact. And if you're able to impact people's lives, then you're going to be you have a product that's bigger than what most other people are doing. That's where the unicorns come in. So that's kind of my experience, my experimentation, and the things that we're going to continue to drive and push for and experiment with as we go on. But again, make sure you're focusing on, if you're going to do events, especially technical events, at various points in the year, make sure you have the self-awareness to pay attention to what's going on and make sure that whatever you're doing aligns with the bigger picture, right? The bigger picture, the people that are impacted by technology, or the people whose lives could be positively impacted by technology and have their lives improved and made better. So that's kind of how I approach everything. And I would like to open up a conversation to all of you. I'm going to check the chat real soon, so feel free to post in the chat questions, comments, ideas, opportunities to collaborate, everything and anything that might be on your mind. But I would like to open up and give our esteemed guest, IBM Federated Advocate, IBM Austin Black BRG member, technical PM turned techie, doing all the things, all the other things that Evan's involved in that I didn't mention here. And give Evan an opportunity to share his thoughts and experience and everything else he'd like to share.
Hey there. Can you guys hear me without all the background craziness? Cool. All right. So thank you for the opportunity. And I like to quote the words of Marshawn Lynch, and that I'm just here so I won't get fined. Right. I started out, turn my camera on here. I started out really thinking that when I would go to some of the meetups in Austin, that, why wasn't IBM technology being showcased at some of these events? And then I realized that, we have a community of IBMers, and we have an IBM community by which we showcase a lot of IBM's products and things to that nature. And I said, you know what? I want to make IBM great. And so I happened to meet up with Jenna, and she said, we're doing these cool events. And I showed up really to make sure that everyone was hydrated. I handed out water, made sure folks were signed up, and, passed out towels if anyone was sweating. I'm the hype man, right? I'm the one that jumps around behind Jenna on stage in the back, and I just repeat after what she says, and I just go, yeah, at the end of every sentence, right? And so as I began to get more engaged and more involved, I have a technical bone, so to speak, inside of me somewhere. And as I began to get more engaged and involved, I realized that some of the technology that we're really pushing wasn't so much that it was unique to IBM as much as it was interesting to me, and as well as wanting to promote and make IBM great. And so I got engaged to look at some different workshops, and I started to challenge myself. At the same time, being a advocate with all of the business resource groups, all the diversity groups on the IBM campus, it didn't occur to me initially, but there was an intersection of some of these different activities. Specifically in the Black community, the first, I think, event that I attended where we really promoted a lot of the tech with the diverse community, was a Black History Month event several years ago. And one of the speakers, and I don't want to get this all wrong if you may have come across this gentleman, he's one of our distinguished engineers. He talked a lot about the way that they were developing certain AI models. And it wasn't so much around skin tone or people, but it was really a model that they were working on where they were looking at cars. And unfortunately, certain cars that they saw, the black shiny one, it always came up as a Mercedes, even if it wasn't a Mercedes. And so when you think about what Jenna was mentioning when it comes to AI and the data that we use, I didn't really recognize that as an example until the gentleman's name is Mike Hollinger, again, distinguished engineer. He talked a lot about how that model and how the data that they fed sort of created some of this bias. And so it's really good conversation piece around all the different things that they were developing. And so I got more interested in the technology, and Jenna allowed me to look at some different opportunities. I like containers and Kubernetes. I'm very interested in DevOps. And so there was an opportunity to perform or not perform, but host or co-host a Kubernetes event. And it really, really pushed me to make sure that I knew the material, that I knew the content, and that I could answer questions related to some of the things that we were showcasing. And, it was really a fulfilling experience. And when I think about the intersection between being a developer advocate, and again, I have a regular job. I'm a cybersecurity manager for IBM. And so we do a lot of things with respect to protecting IBM and making sure that we can keep IBM assets safe. But it's really a fulfilling concept when I think about it to have an opportunity, such as this, in fact, to talk about the Federated Advocacy, where I got my start, why I was interested, and the intersection of the things that relate to the community. And at the end of the day, I mean, I'm really just a dude that enjoys tech, right? And I like to see anyone that looks like me have the same opportunities as me, and I like to see other people in the same vein, that are diverse, that also have the same opportunities, and may have the same type of goals to do things that make IBM great. And so when you think about, not just IBM, but how do we go be great, right? That's the phrase that I hear a lot. Hey, so and so won't let me be great. Well, I mean, how do we make, not just IBM great, but how do we be great? And so the Federated Advocates program and being a member and doing the things that I do, I really enjoy. And if you're an IBMer, we welcome you to become either a federated advocate or become someone that supports what we're doing. And if you're not an IBMer, um, that's cool too. I mean, you can go be great and do some similar things and do all things with your organization as well, and come alongside with us and partner with us as we do all this stuff together. Any questions for me or anything that you all want to talk about? I'm looking in the chat.
So there's a question. Someone had a question. How can startups participate in programs like these? So I guess I can start, and then Evan, you can add your insight as well. So my suggestion would be, in getting involved in programs like these, are number one, I'm happy to send any resources you might need. My personal opinion is, look at the programs who are doing it really, really well. Look at the programs who, and I don't mean in terms of numbers and metrics, right? Like that's it's like testing, right? You could write a test for anything and make it pass. You can create a metric for anything and say that you're doing it well. What things that I like to look at are not just the size of community, but the activity, right? And for instance, I think the best way to gauge a great program is talk to someone who's a champion of that company. If they have a champions program, talk to someone who's a champion for a company, and honestly, you'd be able to just hear in their voice how excited they are about working with the company, and how good it makes them feel, and how it makes them feel. I mean, you can tell by someone's voice and the way they talk about a program that they're a part of, that it's important to them, that it provides them with a lot of value. It makes them feel seen. It makes them feel a part of something bigger than themselves. And as far as advocacy programs, I would say really, great advocacy programs, go to any developer conference. Go to any developer conference and look at the booths, and look at the booths that have a lot of people. Look at the booths that have a lot of people and look at what they're doing. And that's a very specific part of something you can do as an advocate. But they have people at their booth not because they're serving ice cream, right? They might have a line for about an hour or two, but look at the booths who run out of swag. Look at the booths who always have people hanging out talking to the advocates that are there, and talk to the advocates yourself. Um, for me, a great indicator of great company culture and great advocacy programs is how excited the advocates are to be there. Another place to look is hackathons. Look at who's sponsoring the hackathon, who's there, how many people are using their APIs, and who are the advocates that are sitting at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, like I do, trying to debug what they're working on. That's where that community building comes in. That's where that first experience with the company and that person's experience with you as a company, that's where that happens. Because you could have the best product in the world, or you could have a horrible product, but that person's experience with you as a company is in that interaction, not the interaction with your products. If they feel a part of the team and they feel supported by you as a company through the work that you do as an advocate, then they're always going to advocate for any product you have. And you know what? I know them. They're a great company. I know the quality that they put into, making sure people understand their products and making sure that they just help people out and make things simple and easy to digest and understand. I'm sure their product's going to be great. That's where that comes in. And for myself, I know I forgot to mention it earlier, but I'm a non-traditional person in tech. So I don't have a CS degree. I didn't go to school for it. I didn't know what coding was 3 months before I started the boot camp. I thought engineering was cars, like I'm a, 2, 3, 4, 3 something. I'm a something generation Detroiter. So, my parents and grandparents went to Detroit elementary schools, high schools, college, right? All the things. So I thought engineering was cars. And my brother actually builds computers from scratch. And his senior project was building his computer into his glove box. And then he took his Xbox apart and added that later. That's what I thought engineering was. And I was like, I'm not really like that into cars. Like I'm into cars, but like I don't want to pull them apart and like build them. I had no idea about software. And I changed careers. I actually put my applications for med school on hold and decided to take a chance on a boot camp that Kaplan had acquired. And I used Kaplan for my med school prep. So I was like, I trust them. So worst case scenario, I go home and send my applications out. And I moved to San Francisco and I kind of never came back. And I was heavily involved in all the meetups, especially the meetups that were at company headquarters. Like to be able to demystify what the engineering thing, right? What does this look like? Because again, for me, I had seen my grandfather's engineering books because he was an engineer and worked for GM for 30 years. All I saw was, derivatives and, engineering and calculus, books. I didn't get to, and that's not going to sell anyone. What's going to sell someone is walking into your company's building, interacting with people that work there, that represent your company, feeling included, feeling important, feeling like they want you there. And then being able to ask questions and demystify, like, what does an engineer do all day, right? Am I tangled in wires? Am I solving Calc 4 derivatives? What am I doing? And to be able to see what that looks like, I have a screen and a desk, and I'm on Slack asking questions and stuck on things. And scheduling meetings with my teammate to be like, I cannot figure this out. Can you help me? That's what an engineer, that's what the day in an engineer looks like. And being able to um, pull back the curtain and really be transparent and personable and approachable makes all the difference. And those things are going to translate to um, not just company loyalty, but brand loyalty as well. So I'm sure we all know some brand driven companies, right? The buy-in is with the brand. They can have products that are terrible products that like people spend all kinds of money on and it's a big waste and they end up throwing it away. But they're bought into the brand. So they're like, okay, you know what? They're going to go back and fix it and come back and it'll be amazing. I trust them because I know and I see what they put into, the experiences that they provide me and other people. And I see people that look like me, that, and this is the biggest piece when you go to a meetup, I see people that work there that look like me. So I know this is a company that supports people that look like me working there and not just working in, you know, um, whatever roles, but the role that I'm interested in. Like they have female engineers, they have Black engineers, they have people with different uh, challenges, different disabilities, and different neuroatypical conditions that work there. This is a place. This is the type of place I would want to work, and that's where you get buy-in. So you know there are companies, they even if they don't end up working at your company or right away, they're always going to say positive things and be on board and be on the X company bus, right? They're going to be on the X company train. They're going to be ready to be like a hype man for your company without you needing to ask them to be, and excited to tell people about it and point them in direction. And that's where the real growth is going to be, and the community is going to grow. I don't know if Evan, you wanted to add to that.
Sure, I'd like to add a few thoughts. When I really started and looked at, IBM Federated Advocacy, it was because of the meetups that I was attending. And so, if you're thinking about, how do you participate in a program similar, if you are in a startup, I would say maybe you don't have the ability, as a startup to build your own, and that's okay. Um, and maybe there's not a program, even if you're a large company. But meetups are an opportunity for you to not just network, but they're also an opportunity where you could promote your own company's technology. In a lot of cases, you can, present within a certain amount of time. Obviously, they're going to give you the floor, but you can ask, hey, we got something new and we'd sure like to showcase what we have. In Austin, and I apologize, I'm speaking strictly for Austin. In Austin, they do, I think it's the 12 days of DevOps. And in every year around the Christmas time frame, uh, there's these 5-minute tech talks. So you have 5 minutes to talk about what it is that you want to talk about. In other instances, let's say, for example, cloud, before there's an event, and obviously some of this happened, pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, and quarantine. You might have someone that is presenting on a particular topic, a specific uh, tool or what have you that their company is showcasing. But right before or right after they do that presentation, they open up the floor for questions for people that might be looking for jobs. They also open the floor as to who's got a product release or a new product launch that maybe they want to talk about. And so those are ways I believe that enable you to use those meetups to also promote your products, but also promote that feeling and that sense of community. And the last story I'll tell is I was at a meetup for a big cloud vendor. I won't say the name. And I, had spoken with the gentleman who was a coordinator, and I still keep in touch with him. And Nowadays, when I do see him, I haven't seen him in a while, but before the pandemic, he would say, "Hey, Evan, when are we going to see some of that cool IBM stuff that you were talking about?" And I would say, "We're getting there. We're getting there." And so my expectation is as we come out of sort of this quarantine world, in this hybrid environment, that some of those meetups will start to be in person again. And I'm expecting that I'll be able to talk about maybe Code Engine, which is an IBM product that, not promoting Code Engine at this point, but it's an IBM product that allows developers to be developers in code, and they don't need to know all the ins and outs of Kubernetes administration, right? So I'm looking forward to uh, different opportunities such as that, and using the meetup.com, sounds like a dating site, meetup.com, as a way to promote and build community and promote IBM brands and products. Hope those answers were helpful.
Yes, thank you so much. And if you have any other questions, again, we have some time, so feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to share a few things with you in the chat. So tomorrow we have our first ever. I've been trying to do this for so long and not have the bandwidth, but we're doing it. We have our first ever Developer Happy Hour. So tomorrow we have our Black History Month edition Developer Happy Hour. It's going to be, actually, if you join with the same link you joined with today at crowdcast.io/e/BHM22. It's the second part of the series. So we're actually going to see an IBM Federated advocate, and we're also going to see an IBM champion, and they're going to be showcasing some of the work that they've done. And this is going to be their first demo, their first workshop, their first getting their feet wet in the advocacy space. So I added the link to that in the chat, and also I have added as well, for all of you that are joining on Crowdcast, and any of you who are joining virtually and any of our other social platforms. Let me see if I can just, wanted to update this for you. So I added a feedback survey link. Let me just pull this up so all of you have access to it. There we go. So please feel free to give us your feedback at ibm.biz/BHM22-feedback. And this can be anything that you would like to see in a session in the future. That can be technical, that can be non-technical, that can be spaces to collaborate, whatever it is that you as in our community would like to see from us. We always look at your feedback, and we always are looking for more ways to provide more value to all of you as much as we can. And I've added that to the chat as well. And for me, I just, it's important that you all know, like, you can do this. Like, you can do it. There are guidebooks and playbooks and all the books with all the things and the guidelines and the guardrails and all the things. But at the end of the day, you can do this. I was doing advocacy work long before I was an advocate, and I was a champion before, I was a Twilio champion before they had a Twilio's champion program. And I was just doing work in my community back home that I wanted to see. I didn't want to see people that are struggling to find an opportunity or break into tech. I didn't want to see them exploited and taken advantage of by paying $100 for a workshop where there's no developer advocates, nobody technical, and they're serving cold pizza. I didn't ever want to see that happen ever again. So I started using my resources and my connections at companies like Twilio and Slack, and saying, hey, you know what? This is what I want to do, and it's really important to me to support my community back home. Is there a way that we can do it together? And their response was yes. And then the response the rest of the year after we did our first event was, we don't always have the bandwidth to do this together, but what we can do is we can put our money where our mouth is and we can support you in doing this work so you can keep it going without us. So I was evangelizing their company and supporting underrepresented communities, and they were a part of it in a way that, in the best way that they could without having physical locations in Detroit. And that to me was everything, because I came into IBM as an engineer and I would work all day, and then at night I'd be planning for meetups, and I'd fly from Austin to Detroit once a month and go home. My partner was in grad school, and instead of studying, they'd be down helping me set up water bottles and Coke cans and pizza, and or getting catering depending on how big the event was, and helping people, passing out name tags, making sure everyone's taken care of and that they feel like they're supposed to be there. So when the opportunity for advocacy came along for me, I actually at first felt like it. I just initially felt like I wasn't ready. I was like, advocates are people that have been working on these products for 10 years. That in my mind was just the number for some reason. And then when I came onto the team, I realized we were all learning these things new. Like, we were developers in different areas or hands-on technical in different ways, but we were all coming together and learning the technology together at the same time. It was new for everyone. And I was able to take the work that I was now doing for work full time and continue to support my communities with it. So rather than me planning events after hours, right, I'm able to plan half the number of events and integrate some of the work that I'm doing through the meetup communities that I support. So some of the meetups that we do for our community are IBM workshops, because I'm doing it anyway, and I'm able to share it with all the different communities that I support and that I'm a part of. So I just want to say to all of you, you can do it. If you ever need advice or help or support, reach out to a developer advocate. Reach out to me. Reach out to anyone who's an advocate at a company. If they care about advocacy and it's their passion, they'll be happy to answer any questions. I always reach out to advocates that I know at other companies, and I'll say, "What are you doing? This is what I want to do. How do you think I should approach it? Have you done something similar? What do you think? How can I make this better?" I'm always asking questions. And I think in any role, in any position, technical or non, that you're passionate about, if you really care a lot, and the goal and your passion is to have impact, ask questions. No such thing as a stupid question. I do the same. I'll read the same thing over and over. I'll do the same workshops over and over. And those are ones that I do on my own time for learning. You're always going to learn something new and have a new question to ask. So, for instance, I'd love to get your feedback and run another session like this for Pride Month or Hispanic Heritage Month, or when we're focused on, neurodiversity and mental health. All the different things that we're going to highlight and celebrate and support throughout the year. So I just want to let all of you know you can do it. I believe in you. It's not a matter of, do I know enough to do it? It's, am I passionate enough to learn what I need to do it well and be the best at it? And if the answer is yes, we want to do this, we want to do it well, and we want to come up with new innovative ways of supporting this thing that's important to us, then you'll do it. You'll do it. You might be the first one to do it. You might be the 10th one to do it. You might only have 6 or 7 people show up to your event. But the impact you'll have on those 6 or 7 people, they will carry with them through the work that they do, and reach the amount of people and have the type of impact that you're looking for. So that's kind of my thing. That's my 2 cents. Let me see if this is. So again, feel free to give us feedback. I also want to reiterate, I posted in the chat, tomorrow we have our Black History Month edition developer happy hour. I'm hoping to have this be a success and continue to do this with our Federated and Champions programs. It is tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 Central, and 7 Eastern. And you can register at crowdcast.io/e/BHM22. And when you register, it'll register you for the series. So you'll get a notification tomorrow when we're getting ready to start. If you're looking for more ways to connect with IBM Developer, you can do that on all of our social. And again, if you ever have any questions or need any support or anything, I posted Evan and my information in the chat. You can find me at JWritten on all social. If you need to get in contact with me, you can do that at my linktree /JWritten. I do have a YouTube channel, so feel free to check it out. I posted it in the chat. Once I get enough followers, they will let me have a custom domain. So I don't yet. So it's not super easy, but where's my, oops, it's at the bottom. I was in the wrong place. But Evan, we have a few minutes left. So is there anything you wanna close this out with here tonight?
Thank you for that. I would say just really excited. Everybody says that. I'm super excited. I think I'd like to say I'm really hyped up that you all took time to join us. I really am grateful for the opportunity to talk about some of the things that we're doing, some of the fantastic work that we're doing. And as Jenna mentioned, you can do this. And, if someone like myself can do this, absolutely, I believe that we all have the same opportunities to make it happen for us as well. Take it away, DJ Jenna.
And thank you so much, Evan, as always, for sharing. I just want to say grassroots projects and companies do become fully funded missions and projects. And I just want to leave you with my personal favorite example of that. I'm going to post in the chat here. I'll add a resource to the slides as well, so you have it. Is a project that actually came out of LinkedIn when I was living in San Francisco. And actually, as I was finishing my program and getting ready to start my first opportunity, the person that founded, it's called Next Play. The founder, Leslie Touch, he had started these open mic nights at LinkedIn. And they were not only to help support the different resource groups for different communities, it was to bring them all together and create a space for everyone to really connect and build community. And they integrated in recruiting and connecting with underrepresented talent there to really create a pipeline. And what ended up happening was it was so successful and did so well that Leslie ended up leaving leaving LinkedIn and starting Next Play as a full-time job in a full-time company. So great company. They do work outside of in all different cities. So it's not just in the Bay. They've done events even in the UK and kind of are taking that same goal, that same mission, and doing it in cities all over the US and the UK. So if you're looking for a community, highly, highly recommend. If you're looking for an opportunity, highly, highly recommend. If you're looking for a space to just have a good time and connect with other techies that look like you, that share the same passion for community and culture and working together, highly, highly recommend. So check out Next Play. I think they have an event coming up in Atlanta soon. But that's all from me. And I will take you all out here with a little bit of mood music. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow and at our events to come. So thank you all so much.